When you talk about the language of money, what do you mean?
I mean understanding the nuts and bolts of money. So just the same way that we all learn how to drive. We learn the rules of the road, when to use our turn signals. Most of us do not have even the equivalent knowledge of money. For example, the basic language of money would be, what percentage of your income are you saving and why? What percentage are you investing and why? When will you have $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million? And what will that money get you? Because just having $1 million in the bank is pointless. What does it get you specifically? This is the basic language of money. You've got to know your key 4-6 numbers in your life. Not many, just a few. But once you understand those numbers, it's like understanding the speed limit. Understanding the speed limit means you understand a lot. There's a rule of the road. If you go too fast, what's going to happen? Why do these rules exist? And these rules are similar in money. You can break them. That's okay, but you got to understand the rules first.
What are those numbers that I need to know?
There's 4 numbers that I really like to track. I track these myself, and these are the numbers I encourage. The first is your fixed costs. Those would be your rent or your mortgage, your any debt payments, groceries, the money that you are spending every single month that is essentially fixed. And the number I recommend for that is 50 to 60% of your take-home pay. So that would be, if you're spending 50 to 60% of what you make, what you take home on your rent, your groceries, any debt payments, your car, you're in good shape. Okay. The next one is your savings. That would be roughly 5 to 10%. Savings would be things like an emergency fund, savings for a down payment for a car, things like that. Third is investments. This is where the real wealth is created. And for this, 5 to 10% of take home is fine. Of course, the more you put in, the more you're going to have. And then the fourth category, the one I love the most, is called guilt-free spending. This is going out for cocktails in New York. It's buying a beautiful shirt. It's treating your friends, whatever you love. Yoga, 20 to 35% of your take-home pay. So if you're watching or you're listening to this, just take 15 minutes. Back of the napkin, jot down your approximate numbers. You don't even have to get them perfect. And you will be able to benchmark how you are spending compared to those numbers. I'll tell you that those numbers tell me. It's almost, if you just show me those 4 numbers of your spending, I can tell so much. I can tell what you love spending on. I can tell what you don't. I can tell what your priorities are. And I can also tell where you are out of alignment. So I'll give you an example. When I ask people, what is your rich life? One of the common answers they say is, I want to do what I want, when I want. God, not this answer again. I hear it every day. I go, wow, that's so interesting. So what do you want? They go, most people have never thought beyond a trite answer. So then the next answer I often get is freedom. I want freedom. I go, great, that sounds good. What is freedom? I want to do what I want, when I want. I look at their numbers and I see a huge payment that they're making to a 30-year mortgage. I see debt payments. I see car payments. And I go, now this is interesting. You want freedom, but you have essentially anchored yourself down to not be able to travel or to pivot or to move. How can those two be? How can you reconcile those two? And that dissonance is actually a fascinating moment. I love when we experience dissonance. We all do. I say that I want to work out more, but I don't work out more. Why? And what you'll discover is people often, they simply have never thought about it. What our rich life is, these generic phrases, freedom, flexibility, it's just words. What I really want somebody to say, I want them to go a lot deeper, is to say, I want to be able to travel for 6 weeks a year. I want to go to London. I want to go to New Delhi. I want to go to Thailand because I want to visit my family. That's a good start. If we get even more specific, they tell me what seat on the airline they're sitting on. They tell me where they're eating. They tell me who they're bringing with. But to simply say, I want freedom, is so vague that when I look at your numbers, there's often a huge incongruity with how you're spending versus what you claim your rich life is.
the popular narrative is, for most people, the minute they get any decent amount of money is to buy your first house. And that's what people do. They take a 10% deposit or a 20% deposit, whatever it might be, and they buy a house. Why is that a poor investment? Why is that a bad thing to do? Because that does kind of sit counter to the popular narrative.
For the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to go deeper. Again, when I was living here, I kept a very close eye on real estate. And the place right next to me, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same everything, it would have cost 2.2 times what I was paying in rent. So just to give you an example, if I was paying $3,000 a month, it would have cost about $6,400 a month to own. Okay? I said, you know what? I like renting. If I have a problem, I just text my landlord. I took the $3,400 I would have spent owning, when factoring in phantom costs, maintenance, interest, taxes, all of that, and I simply invested. And I made more money doing that than I would have owning.
What about if you're buying somewhere for the rental income?
That can work. So owning real estate as an investment can be part of a well-diversified portfolio if you run the numbers. Right now, there's a lot of hype. People go, I'm gonna buy a house, and if I don't like it or whatever, I'm just gonna rent it out. Okay, fine. But you've got to remember that if your mortgage is $1,000, that's not just the amount you're paying. There's a lot more. In fact, in my estimations, I add 50% to that price. So $1,500 a month, which would include a roof repair happening 19 years from now. We've got to amortize that out. Labor costs, interest, all that. If you can rent it out and make a profit, fantastic. It cash flows, that's awesome. What you discover is that most people who buy a primary residence, the place they want to live in, they buy it because they want it, and then they tell themselves it's an investment. Buying a house can be an investment, but oftentimes it's not. And there are far better, far simpler investments. Here's my key message. I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me. I've been accused of saying the point of this is that sometimes money is highly counterintuitive. Really counterintuitive. It's unlike anything else. If you and I go to sushi right now and we get sushi for 20 bucks, it'll be fine. If we get it for 100 bucks, what do you think? It'd probably be a little better, right? And if we get it for $1,000, the fish will have been flown in from Tokyo this morning and it will be served in an absolutely stunning setting. So in other words, you pay more, you get better results. We're used to that. If I spend more on a sweater, it's probably gonna have a different type of fabric. More on a car, it's gonna look cooler, have cooler features. Money's not like that. If you spend more, you don't get better returns. You don't get better anything. In fact, if anything, you get worse returns. People find this mind-boggling because it's counterintuitive. But in investing, costs matter. In buying a house, you've got to run the numbers because they are totally counterintuitive. It takes a couple of weeks to set everything up, and then you never have to think about it.
How can you prove to me that this is the way to make wealth? What case studies have you got that investing in funds over a long period of time is the path to financial wealth? Because, you said earlier about the paint drying thing. The narrative that we see about how people get rich is, they start a company or they have a lottery win or maybe they buy some cryptocurrency and it goes up. That's what we hear. That's what we try and emulate.
Totally.
Prove to me that this fund strategy is better.
Well, there's a couple things. First off, the research over about 100 years shows the returns of the stock market. And the returns tend to be, at least in America, they tend to be around 11%, 10 to 11%. And if you take out inflation, you get about 7 to 8% per year. Now, for anyone listening, they go, okay, well, what does that mean? That number means nothing to me, 7%, whatever. If you go right now and you Google investment calculator and you just plug in your age, you plug in, let's say, 200, 300 bucks a month, and you plug in 7% return, and you just watch how that money grows, you will be shocked